of course. And I'm just trying to tie up all little loose ends, get an idea of exactly how I really like this, if I like it. And do I want to add a little more, subtract, erase, whatever. I really want to finish this up in this session if possible. See, now you can get these little details all laid out, and by filling them in with ink, you get a lot of variation here, and you can simulate things. This is just done with those green templates.
Everybody knows it sometimes to only turn the bushes and man into a chrome dome. But that doctor owns what makes a man a man. The more that he's got, the more that he can. Through the things that make the window on. Oh, that is man, now they're a big hair boy. Big hair boys make very good friends. Compared to all that is man, so that is before, so that is man. All his men, or when you ain't your money, join in that whole love.
I wouldn't want to be doing this without the glasses either. That headset George came up with, that really worked well. But there's some things like this that I do best with the glasses, so always doing something. When you get 50 years old, your eyes go, I don't care. Ridiculous. I'm trying to figure out just how many more little details. I want to finish this up in this session. I'm really putting a push on. Top will be different, of course, but it'll be similar but different. Yeah, I think that looks good. Now the last thing I want to do here, I just want to simulate a couple of these hatches. These are access panels. The way I do the rivet pattern is for now constantly divide everything in half. Put the dot right in the halfway mark. And you get, without a lot of work, you get kind of a realistic access panel. I made a couple of the access panels, and this is kind of like the way they are on a scale plane. Similar, not exactly, but with some variation. I didn't want to make the same thing repeated over and over. I want some variation so that it stays interesting. This is about, I guess I'm right about at the end of what I'm going to do with the bottom of the wing here for this session. Not going to work on this much longer. Kind of getting to the end, so just looking it over, and as I do at the end of every little session, just to see what I've accomplished. Make sure all the pens are leaking all over the table, of course. And I think that's going to be it for this session. That's going to be about all I can get done. Now I only got, how much time I got left? I only got a little time left. But what I wanted to do is maybe just lay out the bottom of the stab and get some clear on this. And I've looked at about 15 different ways of doing this, have not decided on anything that really makes me crazy, so I'm just going to kind of fake it. Now I kind of like just simulating, even though this is not scale, simulating the ribs with rivets in a kind of a straight line. I don't want to get this to be too busy because I want the focal point of the plane to be up there on the wing on the invasion stripes. And this is kind of an easy way to do it, and it goes fast. And it has a little bit of a prototypical look. Not completely scale, but it won't take me a couple hours to lay the little parts out. And it'll give me more time actually to spend on the top, which is where I want to put the majority of the time. I just heard from, in fact, he was here before, Rich Peabody said Tom Morris has a real good chance he's going to come up to the stunt forum, which if you're receiving these tapes on a regular basis through subscription, you'll get them automatically and get to see and hear some of the, I assume we're going to see Vic's new plane, maybe Suarez's new plane, Mike Rogers' new plane. I don't know who, when, or what, but an awful lot of people are building new planes, and we'll see what we see. So what I did with this incline, I took and made a template up of, this is 32nd plywood. What I did, I just traced, did this one put the right way, traced this shape so that I could simulate that leading edge. And I didn't want to have none of the views show. There's two possibilities. They had all kind of busy geodesic lines and everything. I didn't want that. And I think this kind of simulates where the ribs would be in a normal structure and kind of looks realistic. And let's face it, you know, it's easy to do. That's one of the bottom lines here over time. Well, one of the things I've found, at least to my level of fussiness, to be important is to always, and I got the ruler backwards because I'm looking through these crazy glasses, is to line up this rivet with this one. Even if you just do them randomly, if you just don't follow that continuity, you don't notice it until you look at it with a discerning eye, and then you notice, ooh, something's wrong. What's wrong with that picture? Well, if you keep that continuity, it seems like it pays in the final job, or whatever you want to call it. And believe me, after a couple hours of this, you start looking cross-eyed and bleary-eyed, and I did this morning, I did it tonight, and I'm getting bored with it. But anyway, it looks like by the end of this day, I will have the bottom of the plane done, and I can move on to the top tomorrow. Whoop, don't move around, you silly damn thing. They didn't tape this on here because I'm trying to get this done. See, not a good idea. I should have taped it. Now, as I finish this up, what makes it interesting is I have two different thicknesses of rivets, the thick ones which are closely spaced, thin ones which are far apart, four different thicknesses of ink line, and I want to do one more row of rivet heads here, and that'll pretty much, I hope, figure this up and I can get some clear on it. Real important though to follow the ruler, boy. Any kind of straight line where your eye can pick it up. It's very important. I think it's important to have all lines different thicknesses, not have all the rivets the same spacing or the same thickness of the dot. Anyway, when I looked at that cockpit, when it dried up, that really looks effective. I think that's going to be real nice when it's finished. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing Joe's work. Joe is an exceptional ink person. I wish I could get him to ink my plane. He is really good. And I'm sure Mark Tenz, when he finishes his Super Spitfire, the ink work will be as good as the plans. You know, I even made these little Zeus fasteners here. You can see the little double screw lines for the Zeus's. And I think if you look at this, I think I'm kind of satisfied that we have enough on here. I don't want to overdo it here, so that's going to pretty much be the end of this for now. Now what I want to do is I want to get these radiators, wrong radiator, get the radiators laid out here. Because I want to do some matching ink on the radiator. I can see I can just pick up this rivet line right along here. Now I just added a few more details to the radiator. What I'm going to do is just walk around, do a complete walk around here, look at the books, see if there's any other things I want to really try to simulate, if I'm happy with the rivet patterns. This really comprises, we're probably past the halfway mark on inking a plane now, and the fuselage goes relatively quickly anyway. But I like to look at it from a lot of different angles, make sure I have exactly what I want. And then I want to, last thing of the day here, I'm going to seal this up with clear. Just put a light coat of clear on everything, just so it doesn't deteriorate any more than, from fingerprints and smudging and everything else. Yeah, it looks like that's it. Since we're at the end of the session, I cleaned up all the pens and ink lines and ink tapes and crap that's been laying out here, and my books, get everything half organized here. By the way, this was a good thing to have. My glasses, all my little junk, and I just want to put the clear on here, and I'm going to pack it in for the night. What I just try to do is get the high spots where the paint fields are, where the ink lines are. I go just sticking it before the paint. Just try to get some clear on here. This will protect this. Tomorrow when I come down here, I can flip this over and I can work on the car. Pop everything in here, set the fans here. Want to make sure none of that stuff is melted. You want to put these coats on relatively dry. You don't want to go blowing a lot of thinner on here. Everything looks like it's holding up real nice. So we'll finish this section up. I'm going to pull it up here a little bit, and then I'll pick this up with you in the car. Now this morning, what I'm going to get done here, I'm going to hopefully get a session in this morning and a session tonight. Been thinking about the top of the wing. I want to get the top of the wing just touched down with the M600 and 600 paper. Same thing here. And maybe get the wing done this morning, the tail done tonight. Looking at the canopy, how it dried up, to me it looks real nice. Really nice. I'm going to try to do something on the top of the wing that's real similar to the bottom, but yet just a little bit busier. So without even fooling around, I'll get out the books, and I had a lot of ambition this morning. I want to get this done. I went and purchased some yellow ink, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to use this to highlight anything or to make some dots or whatever. And I've been trying to keep the pens as clean and neat. This is even new for me. Keep them clean and neat and whatever. Organize my stuff here so that in the beginning of every day, like right now, I kind of feel like I'm organized instead of having stuff all over the place. And always the first thing I do every morning is refer to my books, see what I want to accomplish, check out the ink lines that are already on the plane, and try to make a decision. In this case, I know what I want to do pretty much like the bottom, so I'm going to try to balance it off this panel, that panel, this panel, that panel, back and forth. And then if I do luckily get enough time here, I can get the tail even done today. Now I'll really only have one day left. Maybe I can finish the fuselage and actually then be getting into the electrosets. Remember, I have a coat of clear on here already. I'm not going over the raw paint. As soon as you see that the M600 is kind of changing color, you know you're getting down into the raw paint. That's a good time to stop. And just the slightest little bit, just to scuff it up and get it clean, it's ready. And when we already have this test ink line, it looks like it's, looks like it's going to be fine, but I will go over the white ones one extra time. Now what I'm trying to do is repeat pretty much the same pattern, the basic pattern that I worked on yesterday in the same sequence. And again, I'm connecting the dots at the trailing edge. Now I want to lay out pretty much the same as I did on the bottom, all the big lines, before I get into doing the rivet head. Now on the top side of the wing, I want to put the white lines going through the roundels, which I didn't do on the bottom. I just want to see how that's going to look. Of course, I can always change my mind. But once I tape out the ruler, then it keeps the continuity. I'm trying not to touch the black ink. Notice this white kind of picks up some of the dope fragments, whatever the heck you want to call it, but if you just let it dry, they blow right away. Now when I put this on a macro lens, you see the little specks of white that seem to come off as you go through? Now that's just chipping up little loose ends, the overspray of the dope. You just let it dry and you can blow it right off with, and it's gone. Don't try to rub your finger down at it or smear it or whatever. This white ink tends to dry out real quickly. Kind of a pain in the neck, but I think the result is going to be worth it. The overall impression is pretty striking. Now this is one of the things I really have to do freehand and by eye, is the dot pattern here. Just like around a canopy, it's really not really practical to make a template. So I'm just going to have to try to do it as accurate as possible. Keep the spacing. And of course I'll just do the black one here to really match. I kind of like the way that looks. Now, of course, the thing is I want to get all lines that I have on this panel. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I want to get them transposed onto this panel. So I'm just going to be working pretty much back and forth, back and forth. I don't want to get to where one panel is done and then I forget the continuity out on the other panel. That helps me. I don't know that that would help the average person, but for instance, right now I have a little bit of a feel for doing these dots. Well, I'd like to get over there and do the dots on the other wing. I don't want to do them at 4 hours from now or tomorrow, if possible. I got all the dots in on one wingtip. Well, it's nice to be able to go back and forth. At least I feel there's some advantage to that. Now, I kind of like the way the second blister goes through this panel line. I didn't really anticipate that, but now that it's done, it really does. It looks very much like what's in the picture, the Ed Gallagher book picture. Without any extra work, that really does make it look, because those blisters in reality are on top of the wing. And again, this white ink, you really need to give it 2 or 3 coats. But it really does make a dramatic presentation. And later on in the day, I'll try that yellow ink out. I'm just thinking I can do some little highlights or a couple of rivet heads or something with that. And if I can, I'm only out $2. It's cheap enough. There's 2 kinds of ink, though. If you buy some of this colored ink, there's opaque and transparent. You definitely want to buy, you know, the opaque ink. The transparent ink you can forget about. Now the template that I made for the elevator leading edge can serve double duty here. And by putting a little curve in here, it looks a little more scale, I think. See, once you make a template, you have it forever. That's the nice thing. You can keep a bag of these, and this will probably be usable on 10 other planes. Now, I tried to use the largest dots to simulate the big rivets up along the fuselage, and then the smaller pen-sized ones as I go out the wing, a smaller size, so it gives it some contrast. Now, I really like the way the white dots, when it transitions from black rivets by the roundels into white rivets, I really like the artistic look of that. Again, I'm going to put a little more detail and a little more riveting detail and panel line detail on the top of the wing than I have on the bottom. It'll just make it more interesting. The more detail I can put up here, as long as I don't get carried away and go into some crazy mode where everything's an ink line. This will look nice, I think. I tell you, after about, this is about the 3rd or 4th day I'm working on these rivets, you start to get the rivet headache looking at it. And you never know if, your peers in the hobby are really going to appreciate all this work. There's several people that have made really semi-scale planes and nobody appreciated them. But the one thing they always, I think, missed the boat on in my book is they never made them shiny. They tried to use a dull finish. And I think the dull finish is not appealing in the world of stunts. So obviously we are going to try the semi-scale, but it'll shine like a mirror approach. I know you might be getting bored watching this, but there's a point here. And the point is, when I started this model with Joe, I made a decision, a very conscious decision, that no part of this model would be compromised by it'll be easier or quicker or cheaper to do. This was going to be a labor of love, and I didn't want to have the fact that maybe this would take an extra hour or something would take an extra week. Or actually, in the case of this, it's probably taking an extra month. This is probably the most complex model I've ever built. Not only complex model in terms of building, but all the details, the inking, and I'm trying to improvise as I go along. But no part of this is determined by how quick I can do it. Every part of this, things are taking a day on this model, or a whole session, that aren't even on other models, or that take 5 minutes. And I started out originally thinking I'd get all the ink lining on one tape. Well, it certainly doesn't look like that's going to happen. This ink line job turned out to be bigger than I thought it would, but I really feel like there's information on this tape and on the one that's going to follow it that'll allow you or help you to come up with some really neat ink work. Now, Karen's been watching this ink line from the very beginning. She made up a great nickname for me. She calls me Rivet Man now. When it's time for supper, she says, come on, Rivet Man! But I really think this is, I really think this is kind of neat, even a real stunner. You could come up with some nice things. And, as I said before, I thought I'd get this all on one tape. Well, we still have the whole fuse to do. And there's so many little details and little things that I'm, like these little gun blisters and these oversized hinges. So many things you have to do that I don't want to squash it all up. Because, if you never inked a plane before, watch this video, and I hope, you can do it. And if you run into a problem, hey, pick up the phone. Send me a letter. You really want it. This is one of the skills, one of the skills you should try to develop if you're going to be, have a long and beautiful career in the world of stunt. Every time I go over to the books and I check something out in the books, I see one more little detail I want to add. It's unbelievable. Just one of those things. Having the material, having the books, or in the case of somebody else, even just having the video. Hey, you've got the equivalent of all the books right on a tape. You can always put them in a freeze frame mode if you wanted to steal some, some templating or something. Another thing too out there, it looks like Oscar Vanez, who yesterday got a canopy and some other material for the Spitfire. If he's going to really build one of these, and plans are going to be out by next week. If you're really going to do one, I'll be glad to loan the templates and all the stuff I have for the patterns. Just Bob Martins has them now, but we'll be glad to pass them around and make it a community project, that's for sure, if you really want to build one. Now, what I've really made a conscious effort of doing is to not have a lot of the dot patterns be exactly the same. I use the small rivets on a tight pattern, big rivets on a loose pattern. Then I've used little rivets on a big pattern. And now the last thing I want to do, I have the biggest pen I have and the tightest pattern to kind of simulate some real tight riveting. Now, from looking at that Spitfire book, one of the things I can tell you, if you look at the really detailed photos, is the riveting is not all the same. There's obviously places in the plane where the rivets are tightly spaced, where they're larger, and places where they're far apart, like in the wing skins, they're relatively far apart, and in the flaps and ailerons, it looks like they're one on top of the other. So I don't know if this is going to add a little element of realism here, but having a complete variety, not having all the same, seems like it'll be something, at least for a Spitfire, that'd be worth working toward. pretty much closing in on the amount of detail I want to do on the top of this wing. But actually, this went a little faster than I thought it would. You may even get the tail done in this session. And you just, the whole thing here, you just can get bored and get sloppy, but you get bored and sloppy, take a little break, have a cup of coffee or whatever, holler at the wife, let the wife holler at you, come back all refreshed and ready to go. It's funny, Karen walks down here. Hey, Rivet Man, how you doing, Rivet Man? No respect, you know? I give this woman the best years of my life, and I get absolutely no respect. Anyway, we're closing in on having a wing done here. Well, actually, we're closing in on the end of this tape pretty soon, so... And here's one of the decisions you always wind up making. You always think to yourself, where the hell's the other pen? You always think, look at this, I lost the pen. I'm find the pen. Who says he can't find the pen? You're always tempted to want to get, like I am here, get this done and get some clear on it before you smudge it or something, but I really want to make the little extra time necessary to get this as nice as I can, as scale-like as I can. I don't want Adamusco hollering at me saying I didn't do a good job. Anyway, he's got his already starting to paint the blue, he said. I talked to him this morning. He is stoked. The Rivet Man. Can you imagine that? But I'll tell you, I'm real happy the way this worked out. This has been a learning experience, and I'm really getting a feel for doing ink. I never was real happy doing ink up until this plane. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I hope you picked up something you can use here. Not just sat around being bored watching me put dots on the plane. Although I can hear some people now going, oh, doesn't he ever get sick of putting dots on a plane? Hey! There's always a certain amount of this you just have to do by hand. And this is one of them, always little access panels. And of course, one of the most important things is just to constantly stand back and look at it and make sure it's not getting too busy, not getting too crazy or whatever. Constantly back and forth looking at it, because don't forget we haven't even put the first letter set on here yet, so for now we don't want it to be too busy. But one of the things I almost forgot in my haste here, I need to put some AMA numbers on that, so I need to decide here pretty soon where and how I'm going to put these AMA numbers. And one thing good too, as you're doing the ink, you'll always find little spots where you need touching up. That's why it's so nice to have those little bottles. Now I noticed I must have hit this with my belt buckle or something here. Right up until you put the last coat of clear on, it's an ongoing thing, touching up little spots. This is why I really feel it pays to make up this little touch-up kit, because it's so handy, and you're tempted to use it. If you have to go open big jars and mix paint with it, you never really seem to get the touch-up done. And then when you're all finished buffing, you say, oh, there's a little spot, oh, a little spot. You never really get the perfection that you're after. Now, I've been looking through all my, you can see I've got a zillion Letra sets. And I've just been looking at some of the things Here are these press-on dots if you want to be a press-on rivet heads. I don't think we'll be using them. No decals. Now actually, to stick with our program of no decals, here's what's going through my mind. I'm real unhappy with the fact I looked at a lot of these Electrosets off camera, and I have thousands of them. This must be 1,000 sheets. I don't really like the look of any of this modern stuff. So, and I've got so many choices of different shapes and everything, and I really don't want to use any Electrosets numbers. So I want to make my own pattern and then just ink in the numbers so that the number is only an ink line, which will make it legal. And now picture how stupid the AMA is. Can you imagine you make something like this, a museum quality model, and you got to put a license plate on it. You know, it's like putting a license plate on a Sistine Chapel. Unbelievable. But anyway, they do require you have an AMA number. Anyway, I'm going to draw my own numbers from scratch and then make a template and just ink them in. I really, I'm not happy. I laid some of these out on the wing and they look terrible. Remember the old MIG? I had these on the MIG. Put some of this shit back. They're kind of hollow letters. Yeah, these look cute and everything, but I don't know, I never did lay these out. I'm trying to avoid the look of Electrosets. You know, I'd like it to look like handwork and not Electroset, and not the decal. Yeah, I saw that on an RC plane look. See, these are hollow letters too. So I guess there's some chance you could figure this out. You could use these. I'm going to try. Oh, well, I'll try first to make a template. It's not like I don't have any of these. I've got only about 8 million of these damn things. Imagine how much money I got tied up in this box. We used to loan this box out and get it back. People would borrow the box and it'd come back a pound lighter, you know, especially Russ Hunsberger. He put so many Electrosets on a plane. Anyway, let's see if we can make up a reasonable template. Now, there's absolutely no guarantee that I'm going to be happy with this either, but at least if you see the way I go about laying this out, maybe you can steal some useful ideas from it. The letters by AMA strict standard have to be 1 inch high. It doesn't say how wide they have to be. There's already been, and it was in Virginia Beach, there was a big controversy about the size of the letters on, I believe, Bill Simon's plane and on my original Cardinal. And I'm sure everybody there was wondering if I really built the plane or if, you know, somebody built it for me. I'm sure that was one of the main things in everybody's mind. But anyway, just to make, not to belabor a point here, I'll make up little boxes. Now the 2 always has to be a little bit bigger than the 7. I'm going to try, I really can't do this the way I want to. Let me see how this looks if I just sketch it out by eye. Kind of do a Walt Prey on it. Now Walt Prey, believe me, he'd be done with this already. But I have to do it kind of mechanically. And I laid out, like when I laid out the letters and numbers for the executioner, 726, this is the thin letter. I always do this, don't feel bad. 1, 8. Now I need to make up a little piece of IBM card. Actually, it's not that complicated. I need to make up a little piece of IBM card and start laying that out. You know, all I did, I looked at a couple of the machinist rules out. I don't have one thin enough. I made up a little piece of 32nd plywood to give me the letter thickness, and of course you just make it thicker and thinner, depending on how thick you really want this. And the simpler you make the letters, the easier, obviously, they'll be to cut out. And now, what I'm trying to do is make the lettering actually disappear. So it'll be legal, it'll be on the plane, but, you know, still can't believe the lettering on this plane. I didn't even think about it, really, until not too long ago, and then I realized, uh-oh, AMA numbers. Ridiculous that you can't, you know, you can't somehow bypass that rule, but I don't want to take a chance. You know how it is at these nationals, boy. All these people we have in a hobby that are so politically correct. Unbelievable. Anyway. Not to belabor the point, but we do want to have this. Now, I could cut the letters out and trace the letters, or I could make a female pattern. I don't know what I'll do yet until I try cutting these out and see if they come out okay. I can even get this one a little closer. I think you get the idea. Now, it's the easiest way I know of is just to cut with a nice straight machinist ruler here. That'll be the easiest way. Brand new blade, needless to say, and I'll just suffer along here. Cutting over some craft paper, that'll make it easier to get the numbers out. And it's helpful if you can get, needless to say, it's hard to do it, if you can get all the edges in one swipe, you know you'll have them pretty accurate anyway. Now what I can do is just make the shadow outline here, I'm just thinking about this, and not be concerned with the letters themselves, and then I can freehand them in, since this is going to, I hope, disappear into the woodwork and be as inconspicuous as possible. Yeah, when they had that protest at the Virginia Nats, it was unbelievable. They went out and measured the letters on a cardinal, and they were like 2,000 smaller than an inch. And of course, everybody there was wondering, did Wendy really build that plane? Then it was awarded 20 appearance points, a perfect airplane. So you know I paid somebody to build it. Unbelievable. But just the little idiosyncrasies of the hobby. Anyway, I think you can pretty much figure the idea here that we'll wind up with a shadow outline and then I'll ink it in using this just like it was a machinist template. Now, needless to say, I want to dress off all the edges and corners, get the corners cleaned up, piece of sandpaper with a machinist ruler, and then put tape underneath this. This will be my mask now for the lettering. The old machinist ruler with a little piece of sandpaper here just to dress the edges off. One thing for sure, this is a lot cheaper than buying letter sets, that's for sure. 13, 14 bucks a sheet. Holy mackerel. And if you do your own AMA number, once you make it up, you're done. Unless you're going to make different lettering on every plane. And now that we can use all different color inks, you almost can do it in any color. Something you can't really do at Letroset is get all different colors. Only a certain few shapes come in all different colors. I don't want to have any hairs hanging down into the ink. I spent a little time getting these edges pretty well cleaned up. And of course we want to have 3 layers of tape so that the ink won't run underneath. Well, if you were really cool, you could cut this out of a sheet of plastic, I guess. Whatever. And what I want to do is ink this on with a very fine pen, get all the outlines, and then go over it with a ruler with a thicker pen. So I'll try to get the thin pen working just so I can get this like shadowed out. The extra tape pulled off, I can just rough this out with a pair of scissors. I'll have my template. Now what I want to do is get a real accurate reference line so I don't have the letters going all cockamamie off in one direction or something. I can get a real accurate reference line here, and then I'll trim the bottom so it's real accurate. And here's the trick is to try to locate this somewhere where it won't be so conspicuous on the flap. I guess it's legal on the flap, believe it or not. Try to find a spot maybe out at the tip here. Yeah, you know what would make it disappear? I'm just thinking of things. I could put it out on the outboard tip and do it in black ink. And it would disappear. Gotcha. Hey. There's the deal. Black ink and put it over the darkest colors. I'm just making the lightest tracing here of where the letters would be. Using the thinnest pen I have, and this is what, a 2-0, just to get a little outline of where I want this to be. Then I can pull a mask off, and I can use a thicker pen to ink this in. This is just a reference guide, like a little bit of a road map to find where these letters are going to be. Everything you always wanted to know about ink. And then you realize you didn't want to know it. And you can just see how light. It just gives me a little reference line where those numbers are going to be. Oh, with this here, I can flip this up and see exactly where my letters are, and I can scribe in one line at a time. Now I can just work my way up here, scribing each one in. This way I know I have them parallel to the trailing edge. Now I can move this up to the next line, which is this one. Get it all lined up. Just made a mistake, no problem, let it dry and we'll scrape it off. Just ginch that one up. If you make a mistake, just let it dry and go on to the next line. Now we're going to have all the vertical lines in soon, and then I'm just going to let this dry. Give this a few minutes to dry out before I go putting a template into some wet ink. And then I'll lay out all the up and down ones. Now when you get an error, smudge, or whatever, or just too much ink, period, let it dry. Get a brand new number 11 and just shave it off. I have all the lines, I said vertical, horizontal, whatever, going in this dimension. Now I want to get in, I'll start at one end or whichever and work my way right down the line, get all of those lines in. Then I'll have the angle lines and the centers, the points, whatever I missed. But giving this a little time to dry will ensure we don't run into a problem. What I did to try to disguise this lettering, and believe me, it aggravates the shit out of me that I have that lettering on this plane. So I put my roof on a horse. Anyway, that's all we're going to get on this tape. I try to rivetize the letters so they kind of blend in. Anyway, I hope they eventually will, and I hope eventually I won't even be thinking about them. Anyway, we'll pick up the tail on the next tape. I may get a time to work on this tonight, and hope you're enjoying the tape and you picked up some good information.
If you win it, comes and goes. I just never get sick of reading this Spitfire. Well, look at this. Can you picture here's Joe Adamusco with his mirror and everything? Just love this book. Unbelievable. Anyway, we have projects to work on. Number one is we want to finish the stacks. We're working on getting into the learning curve of the stacks. We have the spinner mold, I hope, coming. The plug coming from Ron. A lot of little finishing details. Want to do up some props. Finish the landing gear, the wheels. And of course, one of the neat things, we're having Jimmy Borelli as a guest Saturday with his new baby. So we're really looking forward to a nice week. Now these are the little parts that I molded yesterday, and this was very unacceptable for a lot of reasons. I think the first reason, and this was our test piece, I didn't put enough hardener in it. It took too long to dry. It's still kind of sticky even after it's out of the mold. So what I did with the next batch, I put twice as much hardener in. I just want to see if this is any kind of improvement. I'm making up a new mold, by the way, because this one got kind of whipped, and I didn't vulcanize it either. Now this one is, I think we could use this one. This is usable. So anyway, I now have, if you can see, 2 stacks when I want to make this, if I decide to use this assembly. And this mold is still usable. I guess I'll use it. But let's see what this one looks like. Again, we're in a learning curve. It takes time. As soon as I get some acceptable parts, I'll start putting some black dye in, so these parts can come out black. No, I'm not too crazy about the way this one is coming out either. Well, we have 2 of each now. You can see from the first one, the second one's about 20% better. So I have to at least admit that it is getting a little bit better, but I don't know. I think we'll wait and see what the new mold looks like. This one is kind of chewed up inside. I'll make a couple more parts being I have this stuff here. I'll make some more of these parts anyway, but I think what we're going to do is wind up making that new mold, and I do have the new mold drying over there, so I'll let this go and work on the landing gear. I'll pour another couple of parts, work on the landing gear. I got to put some more clear wet sand out the landing gear. Maybe I can finish that up today. Not going to be a long day because we're, believe it or not, expecting a snowstorm today. Can't believe it. Yeah, see, these would take a lot of hand dressing off to do. I think what we're going to probably, considering how bad that is, we're going to wind up using these little things and making up a completely different, again, because these parts they're coming out exactly the same. I'll be able to do a little work with these and maybe make the mold from these parts once they're all polished up and everything. So more on this later. I'll pour a couple of those molds and then get working on the landing gear legs. No, I got about, I think, 4 or 5.